Hey, Daniel, you got me? Doing well, man. How about you? Yeah, no problem. I mean, it all comes down to putting in practice time, but I'll try to give us some pointers that might be able to help some guys who are struggling a little bit.
Definitely appreciate it.
So, are you ready for me to take to the track?
Yeah, we're standing by, ready for you to take to the track. Go ahead and walk us through what you do when you get to a track, sir.
Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do whenever I start a new track or start practicing for the next track that we'll be running, so I'm just going to go out and try to run some laps at pretty good speed to get used to driving it, get used to where you can get on throttle, how hard you're supposed to brake, how far you can drive in, stuff like that. So once you do that, then you start working on hot pace. So I just start doing some normal running right now.
When you come out here, do you just go straight to wide open, or do you feel the track a little bit before you get in the wide open?
Yeah, so I'll be hitting wide open, but I'm going to back up my entry a little bit because I don't want to go in and hit the wall first corner. So I'll just back the entry up a little bit and then start driving in a little bit deeper from there and figure out about how deep I can drive in. I can tell right now, center off, the track's getting a little bit tight. So what I'm going to do is try to get it a little bit more on my brakes, get the thing down and wait a little bit longer before I get back to throttle. That felt a lot better. Just waiting, not even a half a second makes such a difference for fighting a tight car off a corner.
Probably one of the hardest parts to do is actually wait to hit the gas, you know?
Yep, that's true, but if you're having to come out of the throttle a little bit on exit, you're killing your whole straightaway speed. So you're better off just waiting a little bit longer. Right there, I had to come out of the throttle. The tendency whenever you have to come out of the throttle right there is to not do it enough because you know it's going to kill your straightaway speed. So it pays off to just wait that little bit extra longer in the center before getting back into it. You always want to be full in the throttle coming off the corner. Never feather in it. Your feathering should take place in the center.
So, do you, how do you feel about the, like, straight off the gas and straight on the gas? Or do you prefer to kind of ease in and ease out? Does it, like, help the tires in the long run, fuel, that type of stuff?
So you're asking about the transition as far as how quickly I get on and off the brake and throttle?
Yes, sir, that's affirmative.
Well, I like to be gentle with all the inputs, especially getting back on the throttle. But I mean, you can kind of tell the angle that you have coming off the corner. You can tell if you're going to have to, you know, feather a little bit more or not. But generally, smooth with your inputs is better. I can't think of many tracks besides Bristol where I just tromp back down on the throttle.
So, are you still working on, like, feeling the track out, or what are you trying to do now?
Yeah, still working on filling it out, but now I feel like I've got to the point where I can probably put in a good hot lap. I was just continuing to try running harder and harder, getting the car down to the white line, and then letting the white line fall away from me with the throttle. So yeah, I'm ready to try to put together my marks that I picked up throughout running that little run there to where I can try running a hot lap. And it felt like to run a hot lap, I'm going to need a little bit more brake bias, shifted out of the front, so more rear brake, because the car is a little bit tight, and it's going to help me drive it down in and help the car rotate to get to the bottom. So I'm going to try it now. So far, my best lap in this session is a 29.98, and I'll see if I can better that a little bit now.
All right, good luck. I'm gonna let you go out here and run that lap. You know, I don't. It's probably kind of distracting trying to talk about it while you're doing the lap, right?
For me, it is. Yeah, I'm not quite as good at it as other people.
10-4. Good luck.
All right, thanks. All right, that felt pretty good. I pulled it down by about a full tenth. That was a 29.875. So yeah, now I feel comfortable with the track. I feel like I have a pretty good optimal line, and you're going to know that because you get on the brakes, and your braking and your throttle input, you're kind of steering with that more than you're steering with the wheel. You kind of set your steering wheel when you go in so as not to, you know, put too much input into it or not enough. But you really do your steering. You get down the white line with the brakes, and then you get back out to the wall with the throttle. If you think like that, you think you're driving with the throttle, steering, you know, with the brakes and throttle, it's going to help you out more with your time, I think.
All right. So now that you have your hot lap down, now what do you do? Like, are you still in trying to get faster mode, or do you go out there now and try to run multiple lanes?
Yeah, well, typically, whenever I'm practicing myself, I will continue to try to pound the hot lap down, and I keep the interval inside the car. There's the delta bar, and I do it for a sector best so that I can tell, you know, I'm losing a little bit in 1 and 2, but I picked up a little bit in 3 and 4, so I try to go back maybe to something else I did in 1 and 2, but try to repeat what I did on that lap in 3 and 4. And that's helpful because if you have a full lap delta, you might be 0.2 quicker, but you might have been, I'm sorry, 0.02 quicker, but you might have been a tenth quicker in 3 and 4, but, you know, a little bit off in 1 and 2, but you think the whole lap was better, so you repeat it. So if you do the sector delta bar, you can better judge where you're losing time on the racetrack. But the next thing I like to do is go out and put in a run. After I feel comfortable with my lap time, I feel like I've, you know, essentially mastered the quickest line around. Then I'm going to work on a long run pace and see about how the car changes its balance, what tires are wearing more. That's the kind of information you want to pick up.
How long of a run do you need to be out there to figure that stuff out? 5, 10, 15 laps?
I think a general rule of thumb is half a fuel run. You get down to 9.5 gallons, you can pull it off and check everything out. We won't have time to do that here, but that's generally a good indication of what the car's balance is going to be like. So what I'll work on also is running different lines, non-optimal lines, for if you have somebody who just dive bombed you, or you have somebody who barely put it inside you. You need to know how you can run the outside, and if you're pinched down, how you can run the inside. So this will be an outside run here.
when it comes to racing other cars on the track and yet still trying to be fast, like, are you always trying to go out there and like stay ahead of the guy, or is there a point in time where you kind of like pay attention to him coming up to you and you're like, you know what, I'm just gonna let him go? When do you like get racy?
Yeah, so that's a good question. For me, I put the time in to know how the car's going to be in the long run, and I know how hard I can push it. So if there's a guy behind me who is all over my bumper and he wants the position really badly, I know how hard I can run the car and still have speed toward the end of the run. So if there's somebody who's running quicker than me at that point, I will let them go. I'm not going to continue to try to hold them back. Now that's, you know, from the beginning of the race up until about 75–80% of the race complete. After that, it's more about situational. You know, you're going to kind of want to keep the track position a little bit more. But as I'm working the outside here, I'm driving in a little bit deeper and using a little bit harder brake input to get the car to slow down. And then I'm getting back to the throttle as early as I can, but not full throttle. I'm just getting back on early so the guy can't clear you. You have to hold him down there a little bit. If he can clear you, he's got the pass done. So I'm really working on staying ahead of somebody who is looking to the inside if I feel like I should fight. If not, the best thing to do is just 3/4 of the way down the straightaway, roll out and let him take it.
Now, let's say you roll out and let him take it, and as he's coming off the turn, for instance, like out of 4 here, he ends up sliding up and you get a run. Do you take it again going down on the inside, or what would you do there?
For me, yeah, I would. And the reason why is you've already given up probably a tenth by letting them take it into 3. And if you then bog yourself down, you could lose 3/10 by trying to let somebody help you. I think if a guy knows that you're one of the ones who's going to let him by, whenever he gets to run to your inside, he probably won't overdrive the corner, and he shouldn't have that problem coming out. But I mean, if you have a reputation for racing for every inch of the track from lap 1 on, then yeah, you're probably going to find yourself in that situation more often.
Right now, we're kind of seeing you drop off the pace a little bit. It wasn't too much, but like, how do you try to still stay fast, but still be able to see your lap times slowly getting worse?
It goes back to that steering with the throttle and brake. I mean, I have my steering input about the same every corner, and I'm just going to try to get it down to that white line. Like right now, I can feel the tire wear is really coming off. I've really shoved the nose in the center, so I'd have to, that's the first time I tried going back to the bottom. I'll have to reassess how hard I can push the car in. I'll give you an accurate lap time of what my pace actually is right now this next lap.
10-4.
The car's still pretty well balanced. I feel like neither the front nor the rear is coming away too much. You can see the lap time came down a good bit right there. And this is race pace right now. But I'm having to use the brake a lot more on entry to get it down to the bottom. The drive off still about the same as it's been, but it is a little bit tighter from entry to the center of the corner. I would say it's probably wearing the front tires more than the rears right now. So when I'm in the race and I start feeling that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift the brake bias back a little bit. With fixed setup that we're running, one of your best tools as a driver out there is to use your braking bias to your benefit. So I'm going to come down, I'm going to be at negative 2.5 from where I started now in the run. I just went another full minus percentage.
So we're putting more and more rear brake in to try to ease the tire wear off of the fronts, correct?
Yeah, the rears will be doing a little bit more work in, but really it's just to help the back of the car rotate around on entry. So, I mean, the main goal is to get the car to steer more on entry, but a byproduct of that should be better tire wear.
Looks sort of like you're getting a little bit loose coming off the corners. How do you counteract that? Is it just all, you know, like gas pedal input, or is it steering?
That's like a nice edge. If I put too much steering into it, like if I was under somebody, the rear end would be a lot more likely to come around on me. But yeah, that's just all driver feel. That's something that's kind of hard to give somebody advice on. But yeah, you want to be on that edge. If you feel like your car is just hooking up the whole time, you're probably not running the exit quickly enough. You should feel a little bit loose, especially with this new iRacing update they did. It feels like the car from the center off is a good bit looser. Right there, I just about lost it.
That's a really good save.
But yeah, you want to be on the edge coming off. I feel like with this new build, if you're not, you know, running on that edge, you're going to be giving up time to the guys who are. I think Hesgard are like that.
So I've heard a lot of things about like steering input off the turn and not like trying to let the car go to the wall. Is that what you're trying to do right now?
Yeah, I always try to track out all the way to the wall, but it's really throttle that's doing it. Sometimes I'm straight. The steering wheel's actually straight coming off the wall because the rear end is getting out on me, and I'm steering it with the rear tires, actually loose steering it. Hard to do, but some speed can be found there. Okay, that's pretty good for now. We'll take a look at the tire wear and see where we are.
So how are you looking on tire wear there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can't hear you when you're in the garage looking at the tires, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. Copy. Okay, so the right front was at 88%, and the right rear was at 93. Both left sides were at 94. So most of that run, the wear was going to the right front tire, which is what I felt from entry to center. And what I would try to do to help that is put more rear brake in the car, drive in the same or a little bit deeper, and be a little bit more aggressive with my brake input, and then get back to throttle sooner. It's kind of hard to strike that balance correctly, but what I found, if you keep more time on throttle, it shifts the wear away from the right front and puts it on the right rear.
That's
Adjusted my brake bias down to 61 now. From I started 65, I was down to 62.5 by the time that run was done, but I feel like 61 would be a better starting point for me.
so Right now the track temperature's 83 degrees, ambient 76. We are running on dynamic weather. There's a question via Tater Bowman. He goes, what track conditions do you generally run your practices on? Do you practice on slick tracks more or cooler tracks? Is anything that you're doing right now affecting because of the track temperature?
Yeah, so track temp is something you have to really pay a lot of attention to. As far as what I practice on, I will practice on whatever the race is going to be running. That's why I like to know what condition the race will be running all the time. Same goes for official races on iRacing. I'll check the calendar and see, you know, what the setting's going to be that the race will be running. Doesn't do you a whole lot of good. I mean, it does you some good as far as car control. If you practice in the afternoon, you can see, you know, if you can drive it in the afternoon, you can probably drive it in any other condition. But I will practice in whatever condition we're going to be running in, because the car does have a pretty wide-ranging handling characteristic depending on what the track temps are and what time of day it is.
So with our dynamic races, like, how do you anticipate how to do that for, like, our league for dynamic?
I kind of just have to take it as it goes, and each pit stop I really focus on my tire wear and see how it was. And I mean, you pick up cues on how you're driving. I mean, if it's getting looser off or tighter off, the general take of the track as you go on. So, I mean, I just kind of take it as it goes. I don't really have a solid plan going in, but rear brake bias, typically if the track is getting tighter, I'll be adding more rear brake to it. If it's getting looser, I'll generally keep the brake bias the same or add a little bit to it. But I don't notice a huge change from start to finish other than the track slowing down a little bit. Generally, the balance of the car stays roughly the same, in my opinion.
10-4. So now you've gone out, you've figured out how to run your hot lap, you've also figured out a little bit of runs, mainly on the high side and the low side. Like Chicagoland, for instance, it has a lot of different grooves. Where do you go out there and run each groove individually to see how it'll run, or what would you do now to practice for a race?
Yeah, that's a good question. What I would do, I'm at the point now I feel pretty comfortable with any of the lines. Generally, the inside is the quickest way around at nearly every track we go to, except for Darlington, Kansas. I might be forgetting a couple, but that's generally about it. Iowa. But for me, I want to run the inside, and I will try to figure out how to balance the tire wear on the inside. And during the race, that's when I might consider moving up. If maybe the bottom lane's building up a little bit too much rubber and it's slowing down, then it might be worth exploring the top. But if my speed's quick enough, I'll generally stay in the same line and occasionally experiment on the outside and check the lap time and see, did I lose time, did I gain time? Generally, I lose time if I move up, though. Chicagoland is an exception. I did an NIS race here last year where, as the run went on, I started moving up the track more and more, and it actually helped my speed more.
Do you feel running different lines saves tires in a different way than driving a car, perhaps? Like running low all the time would rip the tires apart, whereas driving high would conserve tires? Or, like, how do you feel about that?
I feel that running the outside wears the tires more. Bristol is a good example. You can run the high side or the low side. I remember back in the championship race there, I had done practice, and the inside and outside was each about as quick for me, but the outside wore the tires more. So starting from the very start of that race, I was one of the only drivers to go to the bottom, and it actually helped me get the lead. I had to work for lap after lap to get it, but I just felt like eventually the tires would fall off on the outside based on my practice, because I ran a total run on the outside and on the inside, and the lap times were generally the same, but the tire wear was a little bit better. So it's kind of like situational like that. I was hoping the bottom would come in, but only practice could really tell you. It's kind of tough to commit to that right away. I don't know if that helps answer your question or not.
Oh, it definitely helps answer the question. It doesn't appear we have any more questions here. Is there anything else you would like to add about 1.5-mile tracks, 2-mile tracks, like Michigan, for instance, anything like that, before we go ahead and move on to our next track, sir? Can you hear me?
I'm sorry, I wasn't keying the mic. Okay, so at 2-mile tracks like Fontana and Michigan, you're going to want to try a couple different corner approaches because you carry so much speed in, but the track's so big you don't have to use a ton of brakes. So I'll generally try coasting into the corner and see how that does. Check the tire wear with that, check the lap times. Then I'll try like normal braking, kind of like what I do on 1.5 miles. And then I'll also try quick, like hard braking, where you generally go on the brakes quicker and harder, but get off them quicker too, and then get back to the throttle earlier. And that could help you. I remember at Fontana, when I first started, I was doing light braking into the corners and sometimes even coasting. Then I checked my tire wear and I was burning up the right front. So then I shifted the rear brake bias, added a little bit more rear brake bias to it, and then I drove in a little bit deeper, got on the brakes a little bit harder, and actually made a significant change in my tire wear to where I balanced it out evenly throughout a run. So that really helped me out in the Fontana race in the fall that we did. So yeah, you just have to work on a couple different corner entry approaches. As far as corner exit, generally smooth back into the throttle and then reaching a point where you're full throttle and maintaining it through the corner is usually the best. Bristol is one where you get back onto it and go full throttle a little bit quicker, but generally it's a slow progression back to full throttle. And there's other little things you can do whenever you're running to search for grip on the track. Maybe try to pinch off your exit a little bit. Fontana, another one, where you stay off a little bit lower coming off of turn 4, and to me it helped tire wear and just made the car quicker, holding it down instead of letting it track out. Rockingham's another one. Seems like if you stay lower on the exit of turn 4, the car drives better than if you let it drift up a little bit. Texas is another one. If you let it get high coming off of turn 2 at Texas, you can kind of pretty much forget about your race because you'll probably be in the wall. But yeah, you just have to try to figure out the characteristics of each individual track. How can I drive it a little bit differently with where I'm putting my car on the track to make it better?
10-4, that's a lot of good information you're giving us. Are you ready to head to New Hampshire now?
Yeah, let's do it. I'll meet you there.
All right, 10-4, thank you. we're back here in oh god, we're back here in New Hampshire with Eric Wolf. Eric, we just came from Chicago. Now we're here in New Hampshire. How is this track different? Well, all right, we know how it's different, but how do you adjust to drive this track via, you know, we just came from a track where it's all out all the time. Now you got to be finesse, you know, driving and some type of dirt track experiences. What do you go about doing here?
Yeah, so the reason why I picked New Hampshire is because it really forces you to be disciplined with your brake input. You're going to have to, what you'll find is you're going to be tight on entry under braking, and you're going to start adding more rear brakes to it, like I said before, to help get the car to turn. But there's a limit to how hard you can then use the brakes as you start dialing in rear brakes. So it helps you fine-tune how to apply the brake depending on how much rear brake you have in the car. It's a really good track for that. So I'll go out and run it right now the way that it is, but braking is really what New Hampshire is all about. And getting worse, because the straightaways are long, so if you don't get a good corner exit, you're going to be in trouble. But really I want to do this to focus on brakes.
What is the default braking bias at?
We generally start all tracks at 65, I believe. I need to adjust.
So we couldn't hear you when you were in there. Is it 65?
Yeah, that's correct. 65 is generally where all tracks start us, 65%. All right, so here we go. See how this car's running here. Actually, in this afternoon setting, there's a ton of grip out here. Less than I thought.
Yeah, we're running 79 degree track temp 87, so late afternoon. I mean, yeah, it's pretty nice probably.
Yeah, it feels fast. Yeah, once I hit that bump into 3, the car just wants to push straight to the wall. So I'm going to have to dial more rear brake into this. I can stay out here and do it from in the car, at least take 3% out and see how it goes. But it definitely needs more rear brake. I'm going to go negative 3%. That's the max adjustment you can make, and see how it runs then.
So we're going from 65 to 62.
That's correct. Yep. Still not giving me what I want going in, so I'm going to have to go to the garage and pull more out of it. It's not giving me enough to help me rotate the car through entry to the center. And I actually pulled it down to 58 here. See how this feels for me. One thing you got to watch out for when you start messing with your brake bias is pitting, especially under green flag. If you have rear brake out into it, you can spin yourself right out. So if you are adding more rear brake, you might want to think about putting it all the way back up to max it out coming on pit road and getting into your pit box.
Yeah, there would be nothing worse than coming down pit road and whooping it.
I've done it before.
I know a lot of you guys don't really want to see the stuff around, but some of us
That's what
like
I'm looking
speed,
for in
so.
entry. That worked. The 58% worked for me there. I was 0.15 quicker in the second sector alone.
Yeah, you were definitely a tenth faster in the first lap you went out and ran.
Right there, the rear end actually got a little bit too far away from me, and that just hurts your lap time. Whenever you let the rear end unhook on entry, you're pretty much just fighting to regain control. You're losing time whenever that happens. So that's me not being disciplined enough with my braking. I need to back my braking point up a little bit and then try to make it smooth so the rear end isn't breaking away from you. If you're breaking away, you're defeating the purpose of adding rear brake. You're just slowing yourself down.
So now, going to your point of braking sooner and then letting it roll, are you a driver that, like, all right, as race car drivers, we have a whole bunch of senses going on. We're able to look at the wall to see numbers, you know, like here on New Hampshire, you got the 4321. Plus, we also have our TAC, and, you know, iRacing has the mile per hour thing. What all do you look at to know where you are in the track to lift?
For me, I'll try to find markers on the fence or on the wall, occasionally on the track, but sometimes they get tough to see. So I'm looking for hard markers or cones, anything I can, you know, say I brake here, but I can back it up a little bit or drive a car length deeper. You definitely want to find a mark. One of the hardest places to find a mark is into one at Richmond, or maybe the tunnel turn at Pocono. You kind of have to use a safer wall barrier, but yeah, you want to find something where you can look. And then I kind of judge how I'm getting through the corner based on how my car is steering between the seams. So to get into the corner, I'm looking at a marker, and then once I get into the corner, I'm focusing on the seams of the track.
Now, when you're trying to find your marker, like out here with no cars, there's nothing to impede the way of what you're looking at. But when you're out there with other cars, are you trying to find something higher off the track, you know, like where cars can't get in the way of it?
Yeah, so these numbers are generally high enough here in New Hampshire to where if you're behind somebody, you can tell where your marker's going to be anyhow. But say at Rockingham in a turn one, there's two seams that I'm looking at. It's kind of like just black marks on the pavement. I can't even explain to you where they are because I've just come to realize, you know, they're right there, and I'm going to brake some point between the first one and the second one. So, yeah, you don't want something on the track for running in traffic. You need markers a little bit higher up. Otherwise, sometimes you'll see me behind a guy, and I'll start poking the front of the car down a little bit. It's actually not as good. Normally I like to be right against the wall on entry. But I'll actually come down, I'll run it like right here, about a half a car length to a car length off the wall, just so I can see a little bit better about where I can actually get on the brakes for the corner, so I don't go in and bash the guy out of the way or let up way too early and give up time. But like here in New Hampshire, sometimes, I mean, you'll get a run coming off the corner, so it's good to practice. If you get a real good run coming off the corner, you're going to need to be about right here on entry, so you need to focus on how the car's going to drive. You want to hold it down and not let it get up to that second seam because he's going to be there more than likely. Right there, that would have been an awful attempt at a pass, so, and stay on that second seam and maybe just get the car half a car length below the first seam off the apron next time by. I'll try it again here. And this is where you have to keep in mind, yeah, I have more rear brake dialed in it, so I don't want the rear brake to swap out on me. and I forced myself to pinch the car down on accident in case he's still there. That's good practice. Anytime you're out here practicing, just work on how you would get by somebody. What I felt when I did that, the rear end did want to jump out on me a little bit on entry, but that's part of having more rear brake in it. If the track didn't have as much grip as it did, I'd have been fighting a really loose car off the corner the way I was pinching it, but that's just something you have to work on, because if the first time you do it is in the race, you're probably going to wreck somebody or wreck yourself. Either one isn't good. There's some tracks that just have one line. Here you can run side by side, but some tracks just have one line, like Darlington. You're better off not really trying to fight somebody, especially if you're wanting to. If you're going to try to pass, you kind of have to be out there. The practices people put on, I think Jordan puts on a good bit. It's really good to get into those and try to run with somebody side by side to see where you can do it, where you can't do it, where you're losing a lot of time if you do it. Sometimes it's better just to let a guy go as soon as he gets to you.
Yeah, one of the biggest problems with those practices, though, is most of the time everyone's out there trying to just hot lap and hot lap and hot lap. So, there's a question. How hard are you getting onto the brake when you initially go to stop? Or, like, is it halfway, all the way? What is it?
When I'm slowing down for a corner?
Yeah, here at New Hampshire, like, are you basically all the way on the brake, or no, not really?
I'm on it pretty good. Let me try to look at the brake thing here and see where the marker goes. Yeah, I'm probably 80% brake on entry.
Appreciate the answer.
Yeah, I'm looking at about 70% into 3, but there's a big bump there where if you're on it harder, you can lock up the rears. But yeah, you generally use the brakes pretty good here, and you get on them hard and quick. Phoenix is another one into turn 1 where you get on the brakes pretty hard. Mile and a half, you'll find yourself getting on the brakes a lot easier, and sometimes dragging them a little bit deeper in the corner. But I'm undulating my brake input too. I'm not, setting it at 80 and staying there. I might jump to 80 and then roll back to 20, back to 60, back to 20. You just kind of have to feel it based on how the car's going through. And generally I run with more rear brakes so that when I do get on the brakes, it helps the car rotate. And that's when I'll start coming off. When I start to get a little bit too much rotation, then I don't have enough all of a sudden. I'm starting to shove the nose. I'll add more rear brake and help get the car to rotate again. That's the way I usually brake.
Yeah, especially with these cup cars, they don't have ABS whatsoever. So the way you were explaining it, it's kind of like you're ABSing it yourself, hard on, hard off type deal. But that's a lot of good info on your braking.
Yeah, if you get here, just focus on, if I run down into this corner and I hit the brakes really hard, this is what's going to happen. So if you have 5 laps to go, say, if I have 5 laps to go, I'm not going to be running with my brake bias here. I'm going to take my brake bias and I'm going to go plus 3%, because with 5 laps to go or whatever, you're going to have guys who are trying to drive a little bit deeper in the corner, and you're going to need to do the same thing or they're going to get inside of you. So if you're going to drive deeper in the corner and use more brake, you're not going to want the rear end to lock up on you. So now I have more brake in it. I'll be able to drive a little bit deeper and stay a little bit more secure. See, the fronts they're the ones that want to break up. Whenever I did that, I would probably roll back out and go plus 2 for the rest of the 5-lap run, so I could run in deeper and not lose the rear end.
You're doing a lot of other stuff in that car than just driving during a race. It's very good to know.
Yeah, with a fixed set, you need to take advantage of all the tools you have, and I think one of the ones that goes most unused is the brake bias. There's times whenever I'm qualifying that I'll actually set the brake bias in 1 and 2, and then down the back straightaway shift it plus or minus 1 depending on how the car runs through that corner, how the balance is, so I can optimize the brakes in both 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Now, it's hard to do that during the race because you're focusing on so much else, but for a hot lap, it might mean, plus 0.05, which sometimes I've seen our poles come down to less than that. Yeah, there's a good bit that goes into it. For hot lapping, like here at New Hampshire, I'm going to run a hot lap here. I'll get back to you.
I didn't have my mic on for that. I was telling him how impressive it is that he's out there running, you know, multiple brake biases and still able to run fast laps.
Okay, what I did there is I added, like I said, how I'd run with 5 to go. That's how I set it up there. So I went to +2, which would put me at 60% of my brake bias. That was my quickest lap there, about a 29 flat. What I was able to do then is drive the car in harder and take advantage of the increased grip I have on fresh tires. And I wouldn't run a full race like that because I feel like I'm going to wear out my front tires too much and the cars are going to be rotating through the center. It's just not a very good handling thing. But for a hot lap here at New Hampshire, I generally do run it about 2% higher than how I race it. So that's something you might find the way you brake, you're sitting at 63%. And when you hot lap, maybe you go up to 65, I don't know. But for me, sometimes because you're driving a little bit deeper, you do have to take a little bit of front brake bias and put it back in there for a single hot lap.
That's very valuable.
So that's some stuff you can do inside the car. As far as just getting used to driving it up off, don't be afraid whenever you're practicing to, at some point just put the throttle down and see if the car is going to make it out of the corner. I mean, the worst that can happen is you hit the wall. But you need to focus on getting on that limit. That's why it's good to run the hot laps so that you know where the limit is. But even on your hot laps, push it to where you're hitting the wall, because until you find that limit, you're probably leaving time on the table.
So I see that you filled out the questionnaire probably about last month. You ended up joining iRacing in December of 2016. We kind of know that you put a lot of time in on practice, but like for the people that have joined iRacing and they're still really new to it, and they're just now getting into these faster cars, how much practice time would you say? Of course every driver is different, but how much practice time did you put in personally to get to the point where you are now, to where you can go out and dominate? Obviously it wasn't like just overnight. Can't hear you.
Got me now?
Yeah, 10-4.
Okay, yeah. When I first started, this might give some people some comfort. At Michigan was my first A-car race, and I could not put together 2 laps without spinning the car out. And it kind of is about like it is right now. If you would go practice in the afternoon, I just could not run the car. I'd spin out on entry into 3. I would spin out on exit of turn 4, exit of turn 2. I mean, it was just tough to get used to. I mean, you just got to practice a lot until you get to realize how the car will rotate on throttle. And as far as how much time that takes, it's hard for me to say. It could take you, a good 10 hours over the course of a week or something before you start feeling comfortable with it. Or you might be able to pick it up in a half hour. I'm to the point now where I can generally get a handle the balance of the car within 10 or 15 minutes out there on the track. But I'll put more time than that in. I might take a half hour just working on my hot lap pace. And then if you're going to do what I said and run the long runs, you know, a half a fuel run, most tracks you're going to, I'm not quite sure how much time that is, maybe 20, 25 minutes. That's on a single run, and then you go out and you try running a little bit different to compare that run, and then you might do another run where you change your braking bias up. So you could have 2-3 hours in a practice session if you really, you know, go through every single option out there on the track. You don't have to do that, but it helps if you have the time. I don't have that kind of time most of the time, but occasionally I do put in. I remember for the Homestead race we did for the championship, that's a race I absolutely had to win, so I might have spent 5 or 6 hours of that track practicing it.
It's a long time to practice for a race.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not in one day either. It's over the course of a week. Yeah, generally you're not putting in that much time. I mean, if you go out and put in an hour session, you can pretty much cover everything that we talked about and be really comfortable with the track.
It's definitely a lot of good information you're giving us. We definitely appreciate you coming out here. I'm currently waiting to see if anyone has any questions. Here, you've kind of done a little bit of hot lapping. Are you willing to go out there and run a few laps of a run for us?
Yeah, I'll do that right now. I'll kind of tell you what I'm feeling in the car as we go along. So I'm doing like I'd be actually racing the car right now, not driving it super hard.
Are you picturing yourself in the lead, or are you picturing yourself at the end trying to catch the leader?
In the lead, in control of the race. So here you carry the brake for a long time into the corner, and getting back to full throttle takes some time. So I'm starting here, still just feathering it, still feathering it, still feathering, now I'm back to full throttle. So here's the brake. Start braking. Ah, there goes the rear. I'm off the brake completely right here, just waiting to recover the car, and then back to throttle. So if that happens to you where you lose the rear end like that, you need to be careful for the next corner too, because you build up some temperature in the tires and it's easy to do the exact same thing again.
So, do you feel that the temperature goes away after you get done with that first, you know, turn after the slide, or like a couple laps? How long do you think it takes before the temperature goes back to normal?
I think within a lap it's back to normal. The next time you hit where you just screwed up, you'll probably be back to feeling like you did when you went into that corner the previous time. So I'd say just be careful the next corner, and then you'll be back to normal after that. I'm sure if you look at telemetry, you'll see that's a little bit off. It probably takes a little longer for the temps to come down, but from the driver's seat, that's how it feels to me. So what I'm noticing right now is I'm starting to lose the rear a little bit, getting a little bit deeper in this run. So I'm going to go ahead and put +1 on the brakes and see how that runs.
+1 is definitely putting it back on the fronts, correct?
That's correct, yeah. +1, that puts me at 59% now. I was at 58. So what I'm doing, I'm having to go to like the 80% I talked about, and then as I make the transition to turn the car in, I'm coming out of the brakes and then getting back on it once I set the car.
here at New Hampshire, do you feel there would be any advantage of running the low side, aside from passing somebody? Or do you feel that all the tire wear you're gonna, you know, save comes from basically the line you're running?
From what I've noticed running here, the line I'm running is the best for tire wear. But occasionally I have seen people make that groove down there, or maybe even go in one groove up. I've seen them make it work. I've not been able to feel comfortable doing that. So, I mean, you got to run where you're comfortable. Sometimes if you come up and put, you know, half the car out here, you can get a better run up off the corner. But you're carrying more speed too, so the rear end can want to get away from you like it just did right there. So, I mean, I guess it's just a comfort thing. If you're to a point where you're not gaining on the guy in front of you and you're not losing anything to the guy behind you, then yeah, search around a little bit and see if you pick up time. I mean, that's just something as a driver you have to do occasionally, search around, see if you can gain time. And if you didn't, well, you only wasted one corner, go back to what you were doing. But if you do, maybe you hit on something, you pull the other guy in a half a second.
Tracks like New Hampshire, Martinsville, for instance, New Hampshire and Martinsville, they have different concrete and asphalt. Do you think you lose or gain anything being half on and half off, you know, like the asphalt and the concrete mix, or do you think everything's kind of okay here in the iRacing world?
That's a good question. I'm not really sure. At Martinsville, I've never seen the outside line work, so I'm never splitting. But here, I can't even say, I wouldn't say I've noticed it making a difference being faster, but generally, based on where it is on the track, you have to run higher to feel it. I think it's slower, but it might work later in the run. I don't know. I wouldn't hot lap there. As I run this thing, it just feels like it's getting tighter and tighter. I'm never really having to fight it much coming off the corner. Just having to deal with it wanting to push in the center. So I would take the brake bias back a little bit more to where I had it to start. I'm going to split it now and go plus 0.5. So I actually added more rear brake by 0.5.
Aaron James is wondering what type of setup you have on your brake, your pedals. Like, do you have load cells or potential meter brakes, or like what kind of brakes are you using in the pedal aspect?
It'll just help be a smooth rotation the whole way through to the center. It actually feels really good right now. Brake pedals? Gotcha, yeah. I use, it's a load cell brake from Rhythmotech. They sell the Thrustmaster something 500 is the number. I can't remember what the letter combination is. The Thrustmaster 500 wheel and a load cell brake system. That's what I use. You can check it out on, I think it's rhythmotech.com. RICHMOTECH. That's what I run.
So the load cell's definitely different than my spring pedals that I'm looking at.
You know, I've never run with another pedal type. I just saw that it was easier to be consistent with this type of, and I will say consistency is pretty easy. I don't know what it would feel like with the other one, but I'm not having to worry about pedal travel. It's all pedal feel, so I'm not thinking as hard about braking. So I think, yeah, this feels more natural, and it would be easier to run more consistently with it. That's what they say, so maybe I'm just, maybe I've tricked myself into believing it. I like it though. I have no desire to change and try anything else.
With as fast as you are, I wouldn't blame you on that one. definitely no point in fixing it if it's not broke, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So you've been out there about 16 laps. How do you feel your tire wear is doing in the car right now? Like if you were coming down to the last 5 laps battling somebody, how hard would you try to push it, and where would you think your weakness was right now?
That's a good question. So if I was at 5 laps to go, I'd keep my braking bias where it is, and let's see how I'd set this up. I'd try to get a run coming off of the corner. That's generally my favorite place to pass. I don't like to try to, slam it down inside of somebody. If I get a fender inside of them down the straightaway, then yeah, I'll go for it. But I generally don't try to outbrake somebody. So I'm going to focus on maybe staying up a little bit higher and just trying to get back to the throttle earlier, so I'm carrying more speed out. It's risky because the rear end wants to get away from you, then I brake down to the inside. Hope that I've drawn along inside, and then you get back on the brakes. And that would have been a terrible attempt at a pass right there, but practicing is how you know if you can do that or not. I guess in hindsight, I would have added more brake bias going down into that corner so the rear end wouldn't wash out on me like that. But yeah, I'm going to try to get up high and get a run coming out of the corner so that I can draw alongside the guy.
So, what black box do you race with the most up? Is it your brake bias or is it your relative? Because the reason I asked this, for instance, is I was pretty much told when I came into iRacing to always keep that relative up. And as you're starting in the lower series, you don't really play around the brake bias too much. So now that you've been in iRacing almost 2 years, do you always run around with the brake bias, or what box?
No. I've kind of made it sound like I just focus on brake bias the whole race, but really I just want to come to New Hampshire to try to explain the brake bias so people get a better grip about, what your options are from the car. But I don't make many brake bias changes. I might make one during a run, and usually that's enough to get me through the whole race. But the one I keep up all the time is the relative. I think it's probably the most important one to use because you can tell, is it a lap car ahead of you? Is it somebody for position ahead of you? Is the guy behind you gaining? How about the guy, the next car back? Is he gaining on the guy behind you? So it helps you have a better picture of the race if you keep the relative on there. I would say that's the most important one to keep up. Is that Daniel?
Thank you for answering that question. Is there anything else you would like to add tonight?
Let's see here. There's stuff that just comes with time, like racing etiquette. Like how would you race somebody if there were 10 laps to go versus, the first lap? Are you going to step in there 3 wide or whatever? It's tough in the moment to know, so it's best to have a plan ahead of time. Maybe try to take it a little bit easier at the start. But you're also on fresh tires, so you don't want to let people, just run all over you. So, it's just kind of as you race, you get used to how to handle that. But yeah, there's different things you do depending on the situation. And I've made many a wrong calls before, like pitting with 10 to go when the fall off was only 0.4 of a second between your fastest lap and where you went to. Yeah, you just have to, that's another thing while I'm at it to talk about. Maybe go in and take 2 tires after running 15 laps and see how it runs. Is it as fast, or is it 1/10 off, or are you like a half a second off? That'll help you know whether to take 2 tires in the race or not. And help you understand what 4 tires would mean if the caution comes out. It's good to have a strategy in mind ahead of time, what you're going to do with 10 to go, 5 to go. So yeah, focus on your strategy and how new tires help versus worn tires.
ever go out there and practice restarts by yourself?
Yeah, I do. I will check the pit car speed, pace car speed, and I'll come off to where normally you guys start, and I will work on it from there, because you need to know how hard you can run through 1 and 2. There's some tracks you can run wide open, and there's some tracks where you gotta, you know, let up a little bit, and it's good to know that ahead of time. Otherwise, you find yourself rolling out of the throttle coming off the corner, and then people will freight train you down the straightaway. So yeah, definitely work on your restarts based on the pace car speed and where guys generally start.
Alright, I'm going to ask you the most argued question on iRacing forums that I've seen basically everywhere. Under caution, do you have any pros to weaving back and forth? Have you ever gone out and tested that theory?
No, I haven't, but I find the more, well, let me rephrase that, the less input you put into the tires, the better your wear is going to be long term. So I do not weave back and forth because I feel like it's wearing the tires out. I've never had a restart where I have to worry about spinning the tires. It's less than like Go or Rockingham with 20-lap-old tires.
Yeah, 10-4. I was just, you know, I've seen it out there, and I was trying to get another opinion on it.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I'm right. I don't know how you'll ever be able to settle it. Even telemetry, I don't know, because you run differently each lap a little bit. But the last race I was just in, it was a truck race at Rockingham, and I started on pole, and I was back to third after a little bit. And I couldn't really get anything on the guy ahead of me, but as the race went on, we went and had a pit stop. We had a couple cautions where we stayed out. 2 guys ahead of me were scrubbing their tires, and I was just staying straight. And I noticed whenever we did go back green again, I was able to reel the leader in slowly like I wasn't before. And I don't feel like I was driving that much differently. I just think that my tires had a little bit left in them, and they were weaving every caution the whole time up front. So it could have played a role. Hard to say, but in my mind, I'm going to go ahead and check the box for me on that.
10-4. You're getting married soon, aren't you?
Yes, sir. I'm flying out early in the morning. I'll be up about 4 a.m. Catch my flight up to Ohio, and then I'll be getting married.
Where at in Ohio?
It's about 50 miles east of Columbus.
Nice. I'm originally from, like, basically in between Cleveland and Toledo, Vermillion, Ohio, so it's nice to hear people going back home every now and again. Congratulations on getting married.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. I'm excited. She's great.
I hope so. And it doesn't appear there's any more questions, so if you're good with this, I definitely thank you from all of us at DRL, and hopefully somebody will be able to get some good info out of this, and hopefully use it to come up and compete with you, Anthony, and Austin this year. So is there anything else you would like to add, sir?
Nothing else as far as tips or anything. I just want to thank everybody in this league. I mean, it's a lot of fun. This league's probably the funnest thing I do on iRacing. Yeah, just a great group of guys, broadcast, all the hard work everybody's putting in behind the scenes to make it presentable. It's a lot of fun. I'm glad to be running in the league. I hope somebody can get something out of this. None of this was exactly scripted, so I apologize if it seemed like I was ranting or didn't really explain something very well, but you guys can feel free. Anybody can message me or hit me up in a race. I race with VR, so I generally don't do the text chat back and forth, but I'd be willing to help anybody anytime they need something.
It's definitely a class act. We appreciate that, and you know, looking forward to racing against you this season.
Yeah, same here, Daniel. I'm sure I'll see you up there.
Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks. You do the same.
That was Eric Wolf showing us how to go around the track. We'd like to thank everybody at DRL behind the scenes that does the awesome jobs they do. Owner James Pandolf and Tater Bowman for this awesome league. Joined it last year, and honestly, I truly enjoy working with everyone here. Special thanks to Martin Wenzel and Jordan Gonzalez for all the work they do and behind the graphics and behind all the promo videos that we have here at DRL. Hopefully we'll see most of you guys tomorrow night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. Instead of 40 laps, we'll be running 50 laps, and then the winner will end up getting a $40 iRacing credit, and the leader at halfway will get $10 in iRacing credit. So hopefully that will turn into be a awesome race. 0 fast repairs, so it'll be interesting to see who's around at the end, and hopefully we'll see everyone there. Thanks again for tuning in, and I hope everyone has a wonderful night tonight. Thank you.